in summary, there are a couple of reasons why government should intervene, whether it be through legislation or regulators. Market failure. I think in a socially conscious society, which Australia is, there are occasions when the vulnerable or the disadvantaged need genuine protection in an increasingly complex, contested world. They're valid reasons for intervention. Best practice spectrum management is now in the billions of dollars per year. If you don't do it properly, if you let the tragedy of the commons prevail, you severely diminish that economic and social value.
Well, a good example is a program that we're currently implementing designed to protect children from the harms that they will confront in their digital world online. So there's an example where the market, the entire world of online content is open to kids, and we need to make interventions to help them make good choices and good decisions through their childhood.
I'll give you a couple of examples of why governments might want to intervene in the market. First of all, they might want to try and deal with market problems. So there might be a well-identified problem in the market, but industry are not able to solve it by themselves. That's called commonly a collective action problem. There might also be market problems. That is, there might be regulations in place, but things have changed in the market, and so those regulations are no longer fit for purpose and they need to be reviewed. And finally, there may be compliance issues in a section of the market, and there needs to be some form of investor protection to maintain confidence in our economy. A recent example where there was a recent intervention in the market by government was around the regulation of financial advisors, and that was because there were some real concerns around conflicts of interest that meant they might not be doing the right thing. So that's a classic example of when governments might want to intervene in the market.
Look, there are always legitimate reasons, I think, for government to intervene in the market. I think that market failure, it might be that prices are too high or things are unaffordable for everyday families, and that means that governments have to look at ways in which they can ameliorate that problem. It might also be that products and services are too complex, people don't know where to go, and therefore it's important to provide the right information at the right time.
Governments should look at intervening in a market when there has been a market failure. Now, there's a number of reasons they can come about. For example, it might be that there's simply not the available information for people to make informed decisions in a market, and so government regulation may be necessary in that case. It may be that the way that the market is structured, that certain players in the market have got excessive power, and that can have bad outcomes for consumers, for example. So there are a number of occasions where it's perfectly valid for government to intervene into a market. Another area where it's very important is that each of the market players also wants to know what the rules are for playing in that market. And those that are doing the right thing want to know that anyone who's not playing by the rules is actually going to wear the consequences for that.
There is a reason why we in developed societies have governments to do many things for us. And government does need to intervene in the market in many cases, including by regulation. And this can be when there's externalities. So, for example, where an impact on one group may, without intervention of government, unfairly affect another. Another issue where regulators often get involved is when there's what's known as common property issues. And the most common example here is environmental regulation. Often, the other reason for regulation is what we call information asymmetry. You could argue if every member of a community had a medical degree, they could make fully informed choices about what medicines they take. But of course, even with the advantage of Dr. Google, we will always have what's known as information asymmetry. Information asymmetry is where individuals don't know as much about a product as, say, either the companies or the doctors. And this is why we obviously have to regulate a product to make sure that it's not used inappropriately where people wouldn't have the information to know otherwise.